What's up, everybody? This is Rebel Faith. And of course, I am your host, The Shadow, and you may also know me as Aaron Hoffman. Um, Tonight is going to be a little bit of a different show. I mean, I know this is being broadcast on my Christian podcast, but it's also being streamed onto my other podcast because the topic, I feel with the way the environment had changed, and I'm not talking about the climate environment, I'm talking about the hidden environment that surrounds us in our everyday life has been shifting, and just as it has been shifting for a very long time. I mean, even before Adam. And this is dealing with something that has become normalized and has crept into certain aspects of our everyday life that most people don't really see or pick up on. And I'm not going to, I'm not bashing anybody. I just simply want to share my experience with what I'm about to talk about tonight, and the thing that I've learned and found, and the danger, and that is the paranormal. And the title for tonight's show is Grave Rescue. And I say that because if any of you know me, you know that I have led a quite a colorful life. And without going into the whole testimony of what I've been throughout my entire life, I'm going to focus on the occult, the paranormal. I became fascinated with the paranormal at a fairly young age, and I would ride my bike to the library and I would check out books. Now, of course, my mother would never let me bring these home, and for good reason. And, it didn't start off with the paranormal. It started off with, unsolved mysteries, things like Bigfoot, the Mary Celeste, DB Cooper. But as I started to get into, things with the UFO and unsolved mysteries, I came across these books that had compiled stories and, cases of things that were found throughout history. And as time went on, as I began to, you know, get curious, these things would eventually lead down to the paranormal. Uh, hey, Anna, thanks for stopping by. Uh, Anna has started a new venture. Anything goes. So if you would go check her out on Facebook, and she got some things that are going to be coming up here, and I think you will find her new project to be much more interesting. So again, anything goes. Anna Brandemart. Again, thanks for stopping by, Anna. Now, as I mentioned, my curiosity with the paranormal didn't start off with the paranormal itself. It just kind of grew into that little niche. And, of course, I was also, fascinated with some classic stories of like Merlin and Arthur, and, tales of magic and fighting off ghosts and the curse of the pharaoh in ancient Egypt. I mean, the little things like that just kind of sowed the seed for that kind of curiosity to just slowly grow in my life. And once I started to get more into the actual occult, that's when things start to change. And of course, at the time, I didn't even think about that. I was young. I didn't have anybody to really teach me about the occult or the paranormal. And, over time, things would evolve and grow, and things become more problematic. After a while, I went through some tragedies in my life that would really push me over the edge to where I would start to become more curious about the occult. So much so that I would actually begin to learn how to perform druid wedding. I would learn about actual witchcraft. You know what I mean? And I learned the history of these things. I never really engaged in the actual practice of these things because for me, I always felt that the knowledge would always be more valuable than what you could produce with the practice. And some people feel like, oh, I'm going to learn magic and I'm going to get wealthy, or I'm going to learn witchcraft and I'm going to make love potions. And all of these things, they have merit because this is sad to say, this is where a lot of people do get involved with the paranormal. They get into this for material gain. And there are people out there who, like myself, was really into it for the sake of the knowledge because so much of everything that we were taught by outside influences tend to become distorted and discolored. A good example of this would be the drug. When we're taught as kids, we're taught that, drugs are going to kill you. You're going to become instantly addicted after one hit. Your life is going to be messed up. All of these things. And then you see all these people that are doing it and they're having a blast. They're having a great time. You get high for the first time in your life and you're still alive and you think instantly, I've been lied to. Same thing with the paranormal. We hear all these warnings about the paranormal. We hear all these horror stories about it. And yet, when we first immerse ourselves into it, we don't experience those negative things that we hear about. And we think, we've been lied to. What else are they wrong on? But what we fail to understand is that there are two types of poison. One poison will act fast. One poison will make you sick. It'll kill you instantly. Self-explanatory. But then there's the other kind of poison. The kind of poison that takes years or even in some cases decades to fully manifest the damage that it's doing to us. And that was what happened to me when I began to become more interested with the paranormal. Okay, let me get this comment here. I have Renee sharing this out. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Of course, I will say before I go any further, I apologize. I probably should have done this sooner. This is not going to be a easy on the ear cotton candy kind of show about the paranormal. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. And it's just because of what I've learned and experienced and found that I would be a fool to make you think that the paranormal is just a trendy thing, that it's just, all fun and games. Because like I said, my fascination with the paranormal started as a child, as a kid, and tragedy would strike, my anger and my emotion become more volatile. I begin to look at the alternative, looking for some sort of escape, looking for answers. And my mother, she was a very strong Christian. She believed in Jesus and she stayed firm in her faith. And even when I was at my worst, she never gave up. But she couldn't stop me. And I know with everybody out there that's listening right now, I can't tell you what to do or what not to do. All I can do is just share what I've learned. All I can do is warn you. In the end, you're the one who is going to make that choice. But also, in the end, you are the one who are going to have to deal with the consequences of that choice. The paranormal is not something to play games with. Now, I've met a lot of amazing people out there, genuine people who, didn't want to become dark, who didn't want to be involved with satanic things. And yet somehow, in their pursuit of the paranormal, in their quest through the occult, that very thing happened. I've watched people change almost like a personality switch. One moment they're positive, they're eager, they're curious, they're friendly, and then after some time in the paranormal, it the change it can be so subtle in its process, but given enough time, and you go back to what they were like before to where they are now, it's only then that you see how drastic that change can be. I've watched people go from, you know, the helpful, loving, give you the shirt off their back kind of personality to ugly, vicious, backstabbing, just awful people. And it's not that the people themselves have become awful, but they've become influenced by dark things in the occult, in the paranormal, that has, in its one sense, it has changed their spiritual DNA. It has changed the emotional position in their life to where when you start off, you're curious, and now, sometime later, you are so far away from what you used to be. And of course, some people are going to be like, well, that's just the consequence of learning. Is it really? Does knowledge really change a person so much that they become dark, that they become bitter, that they become negative? Or is it something else? And when I began my journey into paranormal, I really was just a curious person. I wanted to get evidence to at least validate so much of what I had learned growing up. You know, in my faith, in the idea that the world we see is even smaller than a fraction of what's really out there. What lies beyond that threshold that we call death? What lies beyond, or what is the veil that separates the natural and the supernatural? So I began my journey in the paranormal. And then, like anybody else, after a while, I started getting equipment, I started getting evidence, I started doing some very intense research. And I can honestly say a lot of the research that I did, I really do regret for a couple of reasons. One, in the process of researching whatever it is you're looking for, whether you're a paranormal investigator or if you're just a researcher, in that process, you open yourself up to whatever is connected to the subject that you're researching. Because we all know that you can't just study something and just be like, okay, I know it. Part of that research is getting into that mindset. This is why a lot of people who do criminal investigation have a hard time coping once they've left the force. This is why a lot of time people who serve in the military, same thing, they have a hard time coping with life because they've had to put themselves in a position to where their mind has to be immersed, it has to be completely saturated in the moment. You have to reach the goal. You have to cross that finish line. When it comes to the paranormal, is that finish line so important? Is it worth losing a part of yourself for? I've met people who, get involved with witchcraft and Satanism, and really dark stuff. And they all agree that what they study and practice does come with a price. But the one common thread that I've noticed with a lot of these people is they don't really understand the reality that everything not only does everything have a price, but that price has to be paid. It will be collected in the end. There's no escaping. And I know a lot of people out there, they like to say, well, I've been doing this for years. I've been, studying this for years. I've been practicing all this. And here's the problem I have with that kind of mindset. And for the moment, I'm not going to put the religious side into it just yet. But for the sake of the supernatural, regardless if you believe in the idea of demons or if you believe in, supernatural entities or interdimensional entities, here's the thing. These things have been around for thousands, if not millions, if not billions of years. They've been around long enough to have a very in-depth understanding of the laws of the supernatural, how things work, what they can and can't do. Now, you and we're a part of a species that's only been around for. I mean, if you want to go, if you want to talk about in the full spectrum of archaeology, anthropology, humanity has been around for hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions of years. The problem is when we evolve to the point of being able to be consciously aware of the supernatural, that has not been around for that long. Our understanding has been so tenuous for so long, and that it's only been in the last maybe 100 years that we've started to develop any kind of technology that can detect any kind of shift that would give whatever credibility to the occult or the paranormal. So you want to tell me that the human species, who had only been somewhat aware of the supernatural for, let's just give it an even number, 100,000 years, you want to take your knowledge of 100,000 years and put it up against the knowledge of something that's been around for billions of years? Do you really think that whatever it is you're dealing with out there, you can control it? I have seen many people get engrossed, yep, into the subject. So I've got two screens, and I keep forgetting to readjust the resolution on this screen here. Look, nothing. Oh yeah. So yeah, I mean, do people do get very caught up in what they're trying to find, that they do, like you said, they get lost in whatever it is they're looking for. And that's pretty much what happened to me. I became so fascinated and so curious, so determined to get some answers, that somewhere down the line, I lost sight of everything. I lost sight of who I was. I lost sight of who I was supposed to be. I lost sight of what was important. So, in that journey, in that, with that understanding that you are trying to pit your knowledge of 100,000 years, and it's not even your knowledge, it's accumulated knowledge of 100,000 years up against a supernatural entity that's been around for millions of years, who has had experience and interaction with it every single day for millions, if not billions of years. You think you got it. You think you have enough understanding to be able to tell these things what to do, that you can control these things. I know there are people out there that think that they have some sort of, almost like a leash on what some would refer to as God or demon. There are very few things that'll shut down a demon. And the only reason why there are the few things that will shut down demon is because, like I mentioned, there are laws in the supernatural that you cannot change. You cannot control. And that's why it's so dangerous when people get involved with the paranormal. They get this idea that, they're going to learn the secrets and they're going to have all this wonderful knowledge, and they're going to be some sort of supernatural superhero. It doesn't work like that. It never worked like that. I can, ch- I wish I would have thought about this beforehand, but there are notable Satanists, and Anton LaVey is one of them, where their last words was a terrifying revelation of their ignorance. Anton LaVey, that one really caught my attention because, and this is documented, and he was saying, oh my, what have I done?" And yet people want to follow this guy. If you're going to follow somebody who realized the mistakes he made and basically just soiled himself on his deathbed, I promise you are going to suffer the same fate as he did. Guaranteed. I know there's a lot of, I've met some Satanists and I've had some very hard conversations, intense conversations with Satanists. They'll put it this way: the really diehard ones, like the legit ones, will tell you that this is no joke. This is not a game. And that if you're going to follow this, you believe it because that is just what you choose to believe. You made a choice. Let me get another comment here. I swear, lots of people think things are. Oh, yeah, the Winchesters of the supernatural. Sorry. Yep. Yeah, a lot of people do feel that way, and it's crazy. I mean, when you look at things, of course, I know when I was in the paranormal field, and even now that I'm out of it, this name has become synonymous with the arrogance and ignorance of the paranormal field. Zach Baggin. And I mean, he took something that is real and legit, commercialized it, and basically made a little nest egg for himself. The problem is, all of that comes with a price. And like I said earlier, that price will get paid. His haunted museum, all the artifacts that he got in there, it's going to get him. And if you actually followed anything, it started to affect those that worked with him. Some of you may know about Aaron Goodwin and how his wife tried to hire a hitman to kill him. Yes, I know some women like Jack Baggin because, he's a stud. To me, with my experience with people like that, he will always be a bully. But anyways, I'm not here to discuss, to discuss Zach Baggins. I just wanted to use him as a reference because that's the kind of thing that's happening in the paranormal field. You get this idea, you jump in, you find a way to commercialize it, you have these dreams of making money off of it or becoming some famous people like the Warrens or, the Constantine. Excuse me, the Constantino. That's another tragic story in the paranormal field. And the one thing that kind of disturbed me about all of that is, was that pursuit of the paranormal worth it for them? Now, this is where I will kind of put a little bit of a religious perspective on it. And again, this is, there are some truths that you just can't escape. Now, a lot of people like to believe that, human spirits are still around. And I'm not here to debate whether or not the human spirits are still on this world or if they're in a waiting period before they transition completely over to the other side. Because that will always be a point of contention. That'll always be a topic that people will there will always be confrontations about it. But I will say that the one thing, even if you were to look at every major religion, or even minor religions around the world, there is a common theme or a common thread in all of them, and that is that demons have become masters of mimicry, trickery, deception. We forget that, I saw one show where a psychic was talking to somebody who was trying to connect with a deceased relative, and the psychic medium repeated a little expression or a word or a phrase that this woman and her deceased relative only knew between the two of them. Now, on paper, that looks legit, and I don't doubt that the medium received something from the spiritual realm. I question the legitimacy of the idea that it was a human spirit. Because demons, as I mentioned before, their goal is to kill, steal, and destroy. And to do that, if you see somebody walking up to you with a baseball bat that's got barbed wires wrapped around it, and I'm sure most of you know where I'm getting that from, and you know that guy gonna come to kill you, you're not gonna run to him. You're not gonna open your arm to him and try to have coffee with the guy. No, you're in for a fight. So how do you think the demon is going to get to you? How do you think the demon is going to trick you into doing things that, whether you look at it from a Christian's perspective or just a human perspective, do things that you shouldn't be doing? Do you really think that he's just going to come up and be, he's going to threaten you into it? Or do you think he's going to come at you from your human side, appeal to your emotion, to your frailties? Because if you look at it in proper context, Satan or the devil and the demon, I sometimes I have a hard time trying to explain it to people, but people forget that Satan and his demon are angels. Not were, they are. They're fallen angels, but they're still angels nonetheless. So they know how to mimic the appearance of light because they served in light. They were in the light itself before the Great Rebellion and before the Great Fall. They know how to look like angels of light. Lucifer himself was regarded as the most beautiful, the morning star. So, do you think that the devil is going to come at you with some of the most terrifying things and convince you to switch to his side? Or do you think he's going to come at you and try to appeal to your senses and make you cross over to that side willingly? That's why I have a problem with a lot of the people that try to communicate with the dead spirit of their relative. Because you cannot guarantee that who you're talking to was ever human in the first place. When I was a paranormal investigator, I found that 80% of the cases that I investigated were easily explained by natural phenomenon, which left me with 10% unexplained And what I mean by that is there was not enough evidence to determine either way if it was a natural phenomenon or legit paranormal. With the last 10%, I would categorize as paranormal or supernatural occurrences. But here's the thing: nowhere have I ever found any evidence that could conclusively confirm that I ever spoke to a human spirit. I have another culprit here, Matt Barron. Um, I just did a show with him, but was it yesterday? Yesterday or the day before, we were talking about death. We were dealing with the aftermath of close friend passing. And for those of you who know, uh, you probably caught the show. And if you don't know, we are talking about Raymond Newsom. With he was a good friend. He was one of those people that I talked about that amazing people that I met in the field. So, as I was saying, back to the whole thing, I've never been able to confirm that what I talked to was ever a human spirit. And that's why I can't emphasize enough just how dangerous the paranormal field is. First and foremost, I would never recommend anybody getting involved. But if you're not going to take that advice, then at least listen carefully when I say this is a dangerous game because the devil plays for keeps. So if you want to get out there, you want to mess around with those Ouija boards and tarot cards and witchcraft rituals and things like that, that is your choice. I still care about you, and I still hope for you. I still have hope for you. But again, in the end, all debt must be paid, and when it's paid, it is paid permanently. Is that knowledge worth your soul? So I was rescued from the grave. I still struggle with a lot of old mindsets and a lot of ways of thinking and emotional responses that I know stem from a lot of the dark stuff that I got involved with in my time as a paranormal investigator. And in that line of thought, I do want to kind of go over some of the warning signs, some of the things that you should look out for. Because while the paranormal, a lot of people may see it as, hooey or, hogwash, whatever. Think of it however you want. There is, well, we all know about psychology. We all know about mental health. There is a connection between poor mental health or negative mental health and the paranormal. And this is something that most people, it's hard to catch because it's all, like I said, it's always subtle, it's always small. You never know it, and it's not always right away. I mean, like I said, some of the stuff could take decades before the root gets so deep and the changes becomes strong or noticeable enough that you're like, oh my gosh, what's happening here? And that if you're even lucky enough to catch it. Because I know people out there in the field right now that are so wrapped up in that darkness, so wrapped up in their own ego, so wrapped up in their own dark emotion that they can't even see the rot that is happening inside their own life. So there is a connection with mental health, with psychology, and the paranormal. Some of the things you want to keep an eye out for. Number one is the change in behavior. This is probably the most common one. And when I say changes in behavior, it's actually really common to where people who start off in the paranormal, they're average enough. They're decent people. They may have a job. They may have a family. They may be just casual people. But at some point, you'll start to notice that they start to become more fascinated with the darker thing. They become more fascinated with murder, more fascinated with death, more fascinated with, you know, the trauma that are sometimes associated with paranormal investigation, horror movies. Um, those kind of changes in behavior are usually the first one that are a giveaway. The next one is more on the emotional side. And these this kind of red flag is a little harder to catch because it deals specifically with emotions. Something that we all have, something that we all, consider normal is just how we are. Sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're sad, sometimes we're angry, sometimes we're meh, whatever the case may be. But if you pay close enough attention, you'll start to notice that the longer people are in the paranormal field, the more likely they are to snap. The more likely they are to just have a bout of irritability and just lash out at people that over things that they normally wouldn't. Um, yep, disassociate. Yeah, but that's that kind of connect to the emotional side of it. Uh, One thing that I've seen some people do is, what he's talking about is they withdraw. They don't talk to people very much. They kind of withdraw within themselves. They withdraw them. You know, they pull themselves away from everybody and become more, for lack of a better word, obsessed with the paranormal. And I know that feeling because there have been a few cases that I investigated to where I was so wrapped up with the investigation, with the research, that I became dark. And I'm talking, I was doing research on a place that I frequented a lot, and there was two cases that was connected to this particular location. One involved a 6-year-old boy being beat to death, and the other involved a woman being burned alive in a domestic dispute. I was so determined to learn as much as I could so that when I did my investigation, I could at least have some sort of roadmap to go by. That when I got there, I couldn't even see the beauty that was there. Now, this place is called Carlos Avery, and it's a wildlife management area. Gorgeous place. I've gone out there and I've done wildlife photography, but when I started to investigate those two cases, which is two of actually 5 cases that happened out there, I couldn't see the beauty with the animals anymore. I couldn't see, I couldn't wrap my head around what I was seeing when I watched the sunset. Because all I could think about was the death, the horrible way those people died. What was their last thought? What was their last feeling? And that stuff started to come home with me. And I still have a lot of my old podcasts, and I know if I go back and look at them, I can point out exactly when certain changes began to happen. And it's a scary thing because at the time, I couldn't see the changes happening. I could see it happening in everybody else, but I couldn't see it in myself. That's why, in the end, it literally took the power of Jesus to get away from that darkness because I was in deep enough. I became aware that I had no way out. I could not get out of it. Some of you are out there right now. You're at that point. You can't tell that your life is screwed up. You can't see that blackness, that negativity has seeped into your system like a black oil. You can't tell that you are nothing like you used to be. Heck, chances are you probably can't even intellectually comprehend that your friends and family are trying to tell you that you're not the same person anymore. I've been there several times. Yep. Yeah, Matt and I, we've talked about this at length on several shows about the dangers of mental health in the paranormal field. But when you get to that point and you can't even see that slow, rotting death happening inside of you, that is when you are at the most dangerous point in your life. And I'm not saying, you're going to get possessed and go off on a killing spree, but I am saying you are going to find yourself in a position to where if you do find you can see that you're in trouble, there's that risk that you're just not going to have it in you to look for help. And if something happens and you lose your life and you cross over that line, let me cut that here real quick. You're witnessing me in that. Yep. But as I was saying before, just is that what you're saying? If you are in that dark place and you're in the paranormal field and you cross over, there's no coming back. And of course, if you haven't figured it out by now, my answer to that is Jesus. But that's a choice you have to make on your own. I can walk you through the prayer. I can pray with you, for you, but you have to make that choice yourself. And a lot of time, the first thing people need to do is take a very brutal and honest look at yourself and ask yourself, if I had that much darkness in me, would I be able to see it? You need to ask yourself, is all this pursuit of the paranormal, is all this chasing down knowledge, is it worth my soul? Is it worth my life? Like I said, I can only warn you about the dangers. I can only try to inspire you to ask questions. But you're the one that's got to figure this out. You're the one that's got to decide if you want to stay in it or if you want to get out of it. You're the one that has to decide if you want to take a gamble with eternity. You and Raymond helped me realize what was happening. And like I said, that goes back to what I was saying before. Sometimes the negative thing that's affecting us is blinding us so much that we can't even see what's happening. And it usually ends up taking somebody else to point it out for us to finally be like, oh my gosh, how could I have not seen that? I've made it very clear about my position with my life now that I've made Jesus my Lord and Savior. But I'm also very much aware that the supernatural, the paranormal, it is real. But do you really think you know what's behind it? If you like this particular episode, if you know somebody that could benefit from this, please do share it out. You can follow me on Facebook and YouTube. All the link for that is down in the description below. I do have a website where I try to put up blogs and articles as well as the audio that you can download. And I really do hope for all the people out there in the paranormal field, the ones that I know and don't know, I hope that you come to your senses, but only because I care, because I would like to see you all on the other side. But in the meantime, at the very least, you can be smart, you can be safe, and do try to be kind to one another because you never know. Your one act of kindness might change somebody's life. That life you change might end up being your own. So that's it for me from this midway of mystery, this carnival of chaos, this weirdness, this strange thing that we call the paranormal. But this is Rebel Faith. Be blessed, and I'll see you next time.